So, hello, everyone. Welcome to this special welcoming prayer refresher enrichment offering with Cherry Haisten. I am Sylvia Sepulveda, the founder and leader of Secret Garden Practices. I hold both online and in-person contemplative community from my home on Bay Bridge Island in Washington State, as well as at Faith Episcopal Church in Poulsbo. I also offer online or in-person spiritual direction, group dream work, and one-to-one dream work. You can find more information about all these offerings at my website, secretgardenpractices.com. First of all, I'd like to thank my friend Alex Flanagan for his help today. If something happens to my connection, Alex will be able to take over. If you have technical issues with the event, please use the chat to let us know. Today's event will be recorded. The chat to everyone is currently disabled, but will enable it when Cherry is ready to take questions. Our normal Thursday schedule is to allow a half hour for welcoming prayer, but for today's session, we'll be extending that to a full hour at least. We'll allow as much time for centering prayer as we have remaining after the question and answer portion of Cherry's presentation. So again, welcome to this special welcoming prayer refresher enrichment offering with Cherry. Cherry is a longtime presenter of workshops on centering prayer and welcoming prayer, which she has regularly practiced for 3 decades. She has led workshops and retreats in many places around the US and in British Columbia. With her colleagues on the Welcoming Prayer Service team, she worked to revise the 2016 Welcoming Prayer Contemplative Life Program booklet and to write materials for the Spirituality and Practice online welcoming prayer courses. A leader in contemplative outreach Northwest since 1996, she remains involved with the local chapter, though now from a backseat. For 15 years, she was program director at the Center at St. Andrews, a healing and lifelong learning ministry of St. Andrews Episcopal Church in Seattle. Her retirement coincided with the beginning of the COVID pandemic and launched her into the unknown of a big lifetime transition and more adventures traveling on life's journey, both geographically and spiritually. Cherry, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. It's delightful to be with you. I extend my welcome and thank you for welcoming me. It's lovely to see new faces and to see old friends. Let's begin with a little bit of welcoming prayer. So just, if you'd like to, close your eyes and notice for a minute the preliminary, what's going on in your body, just whatever presents itself. We're just going to do a little brief session. So whatever presents itself to you in your body, notice it and just zero in on that feeling or sensation in your body. Sink into it like you would sink into a warm bubble bath or a wonderful swimming pool on a hot day in Texas, or a jacuzzi on a cold day in Washington. Just let yourself feel it. It may not feel so pleasant as those images, but let yourself feel it no matter what it is, even if it's a pretty bad pain. Just let yourself feel it. And once you've done that, when you're really with the pain, when you're underneath it, so to speak, then welcome it. Welcome what you're experiencing in this moment in your body. Welcome. I let go of the desire for security, affection, control, and embrace this moment as it is. Welcome. Welcome. And when you're ready, open your eyes And that may have seemed very brief, but that's what welcoming prayer may be most of the time for you. It's consent on the go. I wanted to begin by mentioning that one of my SU professors years ago was alarmed that I did centering prayer. And she was a sister of St. Joseph of Peace, so very much an activist, very much in her body. She loved creation, spirituality, and she was suspicious of centering prayer because she felt that it was a disembodied practice, that it encouraged us just to float somewhere, I guess, instead of being in our bodies. And she couldn't have been more off base, because centering prayer is very much a prayer that involves the body, and so is welcoming prayer. I want to begin by talking about consenting and the body. What is consent all about? In centering prayer, we consent to God's presence and action within, but that consent involves a lot of other consents. It involves the consent to be in this present moment, right this minute, in this chair, in this room, in this body that we have for our time on earth. And on this earth, all of those consents to be here in this life, in this embodied life. What is consent anyway? Basically, it's just saying yes to God. And it's an antidote to what Parker Palmer calls functional atheism. That is, acting as if God doesn't have anything to do with what's going on in our lives, thinking it's all up to us. So to consent to God's presence and action moment by moment is to extend trust to God that God is present and active moment by moment. And that may require from us a leap of faith. And that's why centering prayer and welcoming prayer are practices, because we continue to practice that belief, we continue to intend to consent to God's presence and action within. I think that when we consent, we are acknowledging the movements, the subtle movements of the Holy Spirit, and we're maintaining humility in relationship to the higher power, however we conceive of that, and we're yielding to that power. And that yield may deepen into acceptance and surrender to the higher power, not in any passive sense, but in an active sense, in the way that Mary, the mother of Jesus, consented. So in centering prayer, if you're having trouble settling briefly so that you can silently introduce the sacred word, then you might review your consent. If you're restless, fidgety, if you're struggling with your body, if you're having pain and you're struggling to get comfortable enough to settle down, review your consent. Return to your consent. You might say to yourself, I'm in this body, in this chair, in this moment. Breathe. Let the Spirit move through and into your body, into your muscles and tendons and bones, and every cell, every organ of your body, and let go and rest in God. We can breathe into ourselves. I remember telling my husband once, when he had some sort of pain, I said, breathe into it, just breathe into it. And he said, what? How do you do that? But we can breathe into ourselves, take that breath in so deeply that it's in ourselves. And that is the movement of the Spirit within us in these bodies that we have on earth. it's a challenge to consent in centering prayer and in welcoming prayer, because we're consenting to this human condition that in many ways is a dilemma for us, because we have these finite bodies, but we also have something of the infinite within us. How can that be possible? To have the infinite inside these finite vessels. But that is the human condition. And part of the human condition is wanting to escape the finite vessel in order to experience the spiritual, or not to experience some of the things that we're experiencing in our bodies. So part of our consent is consenting to the human condition. So let's move to consent in the welcoming prayer, consent in the body. Welcoming prayer, we say, is also a prayer of consent. It's consent on the go. So in centering prayer, we practice our consent 20 minutes twice a day, presumably, according to the prescription, or more or less. But when we practice centering prayer, it's usually a small part of the day. And we have all these other days out in the world, all these other hours. And we are really called to consent in each of those moments. How do we do that? St. Paul said, pray unceasingly. How do we do that? How do we keep our connection with God open, keep our consent going when we're bombarded by things from every direction in our daily lives? We're almost assaulted by things in our daily lives. How, when those things are snatching our attention, do we stay in the present moment and stay with our consent? It's challenging. And the welcoming prayer can help us do that. And so the welcoming prayer is consent on the go. And it's also consent to be in this body. And it really, to practice welcoming prayer in a deep way, I believe, requires that we practice with our bodies. So the first movement of welcoming prayer is feel and sink into what you're experiencing this moment in your body. Feel and experience. Okay, well, how do you do that? First, you have to notice that you're experiencing something in your body. And often we ignore our bodies, or we're oblivious to our bodies. So if you're not used to paying attention to what's happening in the tissue, then you begin to pay attention, and then noticing begets noticing. So notice. And when you notice that something's happening in your body, then you feel it. You let yourself feel it and sink into what you're experiencing. Sometimes we have the luxury of being led through a body scan, which can be a lovely experience. And I know that Sylvia leads you through a body scan when you do the welcoming prayer. And that can help us to notice. And most of the time when we're practicing welcoming prayer, we don't have somebody helping us. We don't have somebody leading us through the steps or leading us to notice what's happening in our bodies. And so the practice of doing a body scan from time to time with somebody else leading, or just you yourself doing it, helps us to notice in those moments when we're not intentionally doing the prayer, but the prayer is available to us. And when we begin to notice what's happening in our bodies, we can feel it right away and move into the welcoming prayer, no matter what's happening around us. Let's think of a few examples of that. Maybe you can think of an example of when you have noticed some strong reaction to something in your body, or you've noticed a pain somewhere in your body. Have you been able to do the welcoming prayer with that? If something happens say in your family or at work, and you're triggered, it makes you very angry. Where do you feel that anger in your body? When you listen to the news and your stomach gets tied up in knots, that's what you do the welcoming prayer with, those feelings that you have in the body. Sometimes people focus more on emotion in doing the welcoming prayer. But part of the teaching that we've received from Thomas Keating is that every emotion has a corresponding body sensation. And our bodies, as you know, are the storehouse, they're the warehouse of a lifetime of wounds and experiences of all sorts, the joyful experiences in our lives, all of our memories, whether it's suffering from abuse or whatever has happened in your life, those things are stored in your bodies, in your body. And often they remain open wounds or barely scabbed over wounds that can be opened again. Doing the welcoming prayer with the sensations and feelings in our bodies helps us to get to those things in the warehouse of our unconscious. And we're not consciously putting salve on them or trying to heal them in any way. We're turning it over to God to do that. So the welcoming prayer is a prayer of faith in that we're consenting to God's presence and action within. And when we welcome what we're experiencing in our bodies and then say the letting go sentence, I let go of my desire for security, affection, control, and embrace this moment as it is, we are going on faith that God is at work in us doing the healing. And sometimes we may have body sensations or reactions that are triggered in us by external events over and over again in similar situations. But as we do the welcoming prayer with whatever that is we're experiencing in the body in these situations, then we can, be healed. We may be healed. We may notice at some point, oh, this was a situation where I used to feel triggered all the time. This is a situation that used to throw me into anger, and I'm not feeling angry. So that's when whatever one of those little wounds stored inside us has been healed. It's been healed. And that's part of the process of transformation of centering prayer and the welcoming prayer. But some people have a lot of trouble getting to what's in the body, and it does take practice to begin to notice. And I've been doing this prayer now for over 30 years, and I still sometimes am oblivious to what's happening in my body. But if I feel an emotion and I don't feel the connection to my body, I can trace it, spend a little time tracing it into my body and see if I can get to that corresponding physical sensation that's really a deep part of us. The deep unconscious is in our bodies, in our tissue. So the source of whatever emotion we feel that's been triggered by external events is actually in the body. That's part of the woundedness. Our reactivity comes from those wounds. So when we address the body and we do the welcoming prayer with the body, we go on faith that God is present in action and healing us. One of the most important things in the welcoming prayer is to stick with movement one, to feel what you're feeling. When you do a body scan, you're using that internal eye to take an inventory. You're maybe using a little flashlight, an imaginary flashlight inside to notice what's happening and to focus on a particular part of your body that's presenting something to you, a pain in the hip. It could be a headache. It could be a feeling of anxiety that you feel as a little bit of fire in your stomach, or in your going up your esophagus, whatever it is you feel, allow yourself to move from that kind of objective noticing of it with your mind to feeling it fully in your body. So it's a shift from the objective looking at this feeling in your body to really the subjective feeling of it. I surmise that we don't do that much. And maybe I should just speak for myself. I think that I don't do that much. How do I just be in my body without thinking about what's happening? It's hard to do because we're really conditioned to think, to analyze, always to be looking at what's going on and why is it going on and how can we change it. We're used to trying to control our feelings. And so to come at this a different way and allow yourself to feel the feelings is pretty much revolutionary in our lives. And it is in itself healing, I believe, because I think that when we run away from our feelings, that's what sends us into our addictions and our obsessions, to get away from whatever we're feeling. And that's no way to heal. What heals is bringing compassion. So even when I'm feeling in my body something that I do not want to feel, I would rather be doing anything else on earth than feeling that particular feeling in my body, I still allow myself to feel it, welcome it, and let go. I bring compassion to that feeling. That's what heals. And when we bring compassion to it, that's the divine, the holy, working through us to heal and transform us. So I'd like for us to, I'm going to come back and talk a little bit more about the process, but I'd like for us to now do a body scan fairly briefly, and then do the welcoming prayer. And I'll lead you through the body scan and into the welcoming prayer. And we'll take about 5 minutes or maybe a little longer to do this. So if you want to get comfortable, the welcoming prayer is consent on the go. So sometimes when you do it, you may not be at all comfortable, but we have the luxury right now of being comfortable wherever we are. And so settle in, maybe take a couple of deep breaths to get in touch with your body, allowing the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, the breath to move through you and into your cells. And just gently notice. Start with the top of your head. We'll take a little physical inventory. So the top of your head. What's going on there? Is there some tingling? Do you have a headache? Move down into your forehead and into your sinuses, into your inner ear. Do you feel any sensations there? Any stuffiness? Any stopped up ears? Any swollen nasal passages? And continue moving down to your jaw. And as we go along, feel free to move in whatever way you need to. So when you get to your jaw, you might want to just gently open your mouth and listen. Is there cracking and creaking when you open your mouth? And notice your tongue in your mouth. Is it relaxed? Is it pressing on your upper palate or on your teeth? Or is it just floating there in your mouth? What's going on with your tongue and your mouth? Move down into your neck, a place where we often hold tension in our bodies. The front of your neck and the back of your neck, the sides, the glands in your neck. And into your shoulders. And you might want to raise and lower your shoulders. Is there tension there? Is there tightness? Is there pain in your shoulder joints? And move down your arms to your elbows, your wrists. Maybe circle your hands back and forth. Any arthritis or anything else in your hands or wrists. Maybe if you can, pay attention to each finger. What's going on with your fingers? And then go back up to your chest. Notice your chest, your heart. Can you feel your heart beating? Is it beating regularly or irregularly? Notice your lungs as you fill them with breath. Any catches? Does your breath go in smoothly or raggedly? And then move down into your abdomen, into your ribs, and then your waist and your abdomen. What's going on there? Any sensations, any growling or twisting? Move into your pelvic area and into your hip joints. Move down your thighs and into your knees. Hips and knees are likely places where we might find something. Then move down your legs, your shins and your calves to your ankles. And maybe circle your feet and feel your ankles. Do they feel tight? Do they circle comfortably? And move into your feet, those essential appendages that can be so troublesome as we age. What's going on there in your instep, in your toes? If you can, go down each toe. Can you do that individually, or do they all want to work together? Are they stiff or are they limber or something in between? And now go back up to the back of your head and down the back of your neck into your spine and down your spine, vertebra by vertebra, if you can do that. Can you go down your spine, one vertebra at a time, all the way down to your tailbone? These wonderful backs that carry so much weight in this world of one sort or another. They often experience pain. They are often overused and strained. What's going on in your back? And again, you can spread out through your buttocks to your hips. Just check in again. And as we close our inventory, what are you noticing? What are you noticing? Did you come across something? Did something draw itself to your attention? Did I skip something that you're noticing? Maybe you're noticing something that I didn't include in the scan. Whatever you're noticing, allow yourself to feel it fully. Inhabit it. Let go of thinking about it or analyzing it, and simply feel the feeling. Give yourself a couple of minutes to sink into the feeling. You might even want to exaggerate it or amplify it just a little bit, just for the sake of identifying it well. And once you're there, once you've really sunk into the feeling subjectively, then welcome. Welcome. I let go of my desire for security, affection, control, and embrace this moment as it is. Welcome. Welcome. And now you might take a minute to notice again your body, not do a full inventory, but notice what you were working with, what you were welcoming. Has anything changed about it? Has it moved? Is your attention being drawn to some other physical sensation in your body? Let the spirit guide you, let your body guide you, and go to whatever you're experiencing in this moment. Go there. And once again, sink into it. Allow yourself time to sink into whatever you're feeling without thought, without judgment, just feeling it with compassion, not struggling against it. And when you're there, welcome. Welcome. I let go of my desire for security, affection, control, and embrace this moment as it is. Welcome. Welcome. And I want to give you a few minutes here to work with the prayer yourself. Just stay in your silent space and go through the movements of the prayer, remembering to sink in before you move to welcome. Another minute. And when you're ready, open your eyes and come back to the external world. And I just want to review the things I've said about the movements of the welcoming prayer and the body. When we're going through our daily lives, a feeling may present itself at any time. You know, say that you get a phone call about some shocking diagnosis or a death that you weren't expecting. And what happens in your body? Say that you hear some kind of terrifying noise in the middle of the night. What happens in your body? Say that you're driving along and somebody almost pulls out, almost hits you, pulling out of a side road. What happens in your body? What happens when a family member comes to you angry about something and gives it all to you? What happens in your body? Whatever is going on in your life, things happen in your body, feelings happen in your body in response or reaction to whatever's happening. And you may notice that, you know, if your child comes in and tells you about some awful experience and you just can see her distress and her pain, what happens in your body? That's an opportunity to do the welcoming prayer. Some people say that when you do the welcoming prayer in the midst of activity, or say in a meeting, say that's a good time to notice what's happening in your body is when you're sitting in a staff meeting. There probably are all kinds of reactions you may have in your body. If you do the welcoming prayer, some people complain, then you're not present to what's happening. Well, I submit when a lot of things are happening in your body and you're being very reactive internally, you're not present to what's happening anyway. So that's an opportunity to do the welcoming prayer right there, the consent on the go, the consent in the middle of your life. And my colleague, Mary Dwyer, said that once she told Mary Mrzowski, the mother of welcoming prayer, that she could do it all day long. Good grief, I could do this all day long. And Mary Mrzowski said, you should be so lucky. We're not that present. We don't notice what's happening every moment. But when we do notice, we can do the welcoming prayer. And the more we do it, the more I believe that we're opened to welcoming each moment without having to go through the movements. We can sense our openness to what is happening, to reality, whether we like it or not. You know, this is what it is, as people say. This is the reality of the moment. I may not like it at all, but can I change what's happening right this minute? No. In another minute, I may be able to do something to affect what's happening. I may be able to what I'm thinking about this morning is writing the president to give him a few ideas I have. But you can take action. So, but in the very moment that something's happening, you're presented with the opportunity to accept the reality of that moment. You know, if I do write the president and tell him about my concerns about the wars and what we do with the wars, then I might have feelings when I'm writing the letter. You know, I might get all stirred up in some way, and I can do the welcoming prayer then. So whenever you notice what's something that's going on in your body, welcome it. And the more you welcome, the more you're able to welcome and know that that's what you're doing, even if you don't go through the steps. Now, I don't recommend that you leave the movements out anytime soon, but you may notice, even if you practice the prayer during the day, you may notice times when you're not practicing it, but that you're still open and welcoming. I think that it's important to go back to the movements no matter what. I do feel that the welcoming prayer has transformed my life and my ability to meet each moment as it is. Not all the time by any means. There are times when things happen that it's very important for me to go through the steps again. When I know that this is something I'm feeling that I am really tempted to eat some more chocolate chip cookies to avoid feeling, then that's a time really to go through the movements, sink again into that feeling. And we'll talk a little bit more about that next week if you're able to join us again. I'll talk about the squirm point and how that is involved. So the most important thing really is to feel the feeling. Allow yourself to feel the physical feeling. And if you feel an emotion and you can't tell what you're feeling in your body, then to trace it into your body as much as you possibly can. Give yourself an opportunity to trace it into your body. And notice that when we're first noticing a physical sensation, that we're most likely thinking about it. We're being somewhat objective about it. But see if you can let go of the thinking and the analyzing, let go of being in your head about what you're feeling, and actually move into your body, into the tissue. The welcoming prayer asks us to shift from that objective thinking stance to a subjective experience of feeling from within. The head is also part of the body, however. So just because we're moving from our thoughts into our bodies doesn't mean that, the head's just been cut off and set aside. Things still happen in our heads that are very physical. A headache, a migraine, stopped up ears, a stuffy nose, a runny nose, a scratchy throat. These things are going on in our heads. Sometimes I remember one time when I was at, it was the first national welcoming prayer little powwow that I ever went to with the old timers, the real experts. And it was so stimulating. I couldn't believe it. It was just so stimulating. And my mind was just a buzz. I could feel my mind buzzing. And I did the welcoming prayer with that sensation. So there are all kinds of things that you can work with, but your head is a part of the body. But if you notice that you're in the thinking, in that sometimes those circles of thinking, the obsessive thinking, then remember, one of the old teachers used to always say, no thought is worth thinking. And I really think that what she meant by that was that obsessive thinking, that stuff that we go around in circles thinking and going over the same thing over and over again. When that's happening, then to the extent that you can, move away from your mind. Leave your disembodied head to wobble on its own. If it wants to keep going around the circles, fine. Just don't pay any attention to it, and move more deeply into your body if you can, into your flesh. Carla Rico used to say, the issue is in the tissue. It's in the flesh. Our experiences, our wounds, everything, our memories, they're stored in our bodies. They're not in some cloud. They're not in an external hard drive. They're in our bodies. So in the the issue is in the tissue. We are incarnate beings. That's the human condition. We live in these bodies. We are embodied spirit. And I remember, some of you will remember too, we had a priest at St. Mark's years ago who used to talk about the incarnation and say it means in the flesh, in the meat. That's where we are. That's where we are in these bodies, in the flesh, in the meat. And the last piece of advice I have is don't move too quickly from movement 1 to movement 2. Now, when you're on the go, when things are happening around you and you're doing the welcoming prayer, sometimes it certainly doesn't work very well to go through all the steps. But to the extent that you can, stay with the physical sensation until you know that you have felt what your body is feeling, what your body is calling your attention to. And only then move to the second movement, the welcome. And then, of course, the third, the letting go sentence. So what I'd like for us to do is take a few more minutes to do the welcoming prayer. And we're not going to do a full body scan this time, but we'll just take a few minutes to practice the prayer. And then we'll have some time for questions and answers. They'll open up the chat so that you can put questions or comments in the chat, or you can just raise your hand and I will respond to the extent that I'm able to whatever you might bring up. So once again, just if you want to close your eyes, you can practice with your eyes open if you want, but close your eyes and just notice what's going on in your body. What did anything I said trigger something in your body? Did you have a reaction to anything that I was saying? And if so, is it in your body? Is it an emotion? Can you trace it into your body? Just notice. If you want to, if nothing comes to you right away, then you can do a quick scan, a quick inventory. But otherwise, just go to what's presenting itself at the moment. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter how trivial it may seem. If the body is calling your attention to something, it's worthwhile to go to whatever that is. Let yourself feel it. Let yourself feel it fully. Sink into it. Feel it from within your body. Not thinking about it, not analyzing, not looking for causes and effects. Just sink into the feeling. Bring compassion to it. Check in one more time before you move to the second movement. Sink in. And then welcome. 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 You might want to touch back in again. Are you still in touch with what you're experiencing in your body? Welcome. Welcome. I let go of my desire for security, affection, control, and embrace this moment as it is. Welcome. Welcome. And just take yourself through the prayer another time or two. Notice again whatever physical sensation is presenting itself, and make sure that you sink into that before you go to movement 2, to the welcome, and then movement 3, the letting go. And just another minute. And draw your prayer to a close for the time. And remember that you can do it any time. You can do it during the questions. You can do it at any time. I'm touched by the presence of so many of you who have heard me say all of this before, and it probably seems very repetitious, but I hope that you've heard something that maybe hadn't struck you before. We're all at a different place, and so I hope something was new for you or renewed for you. And thank you all for coming. And I hope I'll see you again next week when we'll talk about the squirm point. So that's just going into all this a little bit further. And I think now it's time for, if you want to put anything in the chat or you want to raise your hand, then we can have some back and forth.
Yeah, so wait, welcome now for you to ask Cherry questions. You can raise your Zoom hand, raise your actual hand, or enter your question in the chat, and I can read it aloud. And Alex and I will do our best to welcome your questions in order.
Katie.
Kate?
Hey, Katie.
Hi, Cherry. It's nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
So I'm just curious, when I first learned this practice, it seemed a lot more complicated. So maybe there's an updated version of it, because I'm hearing you say security, affection, and control rather than affection, esteem, and approval, control and power, security and survival, my desire to change the situation. So is there, I assume there's somewhere on the website where you have the updated version.
Yes.
I mean, I know it says the gist of it anyway, but.
Yeah, we have on the welcoming prayer team over the years, we have streamlined it because so many people complained about it was too long and cumbersome, you know.
Yeah.
And what's the point in that? I mean, it wasn't necessary to repeat all
Right.
those words. And I mean, there are times if that feels important to you that you can do that on your
Sure.
own. But on the go, how do you get to
know.
all that?
Right. That's why I haven't done it very much.
So it's a lot easier with this new form.
Okay.
And we do have the brochures
Okay.
that you can get from the website. And also, I don't have it right here, but the Contemplative Life Program booklet that
Okay.
I know that some of you have studied with Sylvia.
Okay.
And then there are lots of things on YouTube too, if you'd like to look at any of those, about, different talks about the welcoming prayer, part of the introductory workshop and other aspects of the welcoming prayer, from me and my colleagues on the welcoming prayer team and others.
Thanks, Cherry. And it
Thank
looks
you,
like
Kate.
Sylvia's got it posted, so that's great.
Tamara?
Hi, everyone. That was wonderful. I've been doing this practice for a long time, but I heard some things today that were definitely helping me, and especially what you're talking about right now. I had always heard these Thomas Keating few things that are universal, and I like the short version, but I wonder if one of you could actually say what it used to be, so I can write down the whole, or whatever Katie just said.
There are a few different versions.
Okay. All right.
And
Maybe I
some
can just
people
find it.
have an expanded version that they attribute to Father Keating that I actually do not think that he was the author of. It's a very long version, and I can't tell you that one, but I can tell you what we used to say. When we got to the letting go sentences, we said three separate sentences about the energy centers. I let go of my desire for security. And I've forgotten what else. Katie, maybe you could read that to us again. Would you mind?
Sure, I would not mind at all. It's right here. I dusted it off the other day. So, well, first the movement 1 was focus and sink into the energy. Movement 2 was welcome as a sacred symbol of our intention to consent to the presence and action of the indwelling spirit. And then the let go statements are, I let go of my desire for affection, esteem, approval. Welcome, welcome. I let go of my desire for control, power. Welcome, welcome. I let go of my desire for security and survival. Welcome, welcome. And then there was actually another one. I let go of my desire to change this situation, feeling, bodily sensation, commentary, or event. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Katie. And when you practice the prayer, it's your prayer. So if you would rather say survival than security, or control rather than power, or power rather than control, whatever the word that resonates with you, use that. That's fine. The team chose security, affection, and control in that order because they're easy to remember in that order, and that's the order that those developmental needs come up as we're growing.
Thank you.
Yeah. So make it yours. Anybody else?
I don't have a question, but I did notice something as you went through the body scan. And I think it's just because I have a virus, and I noticed my skin for the first time, as outside of what I normally notice. And so I think I might be incorporating that in the future, in the body scan. It's just to notice, is your skin itself, as its own organ, offering you a sensation that you're noticing.
Yeah. Thank you, Sylvia. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Deb.
Yeah, I wondered, in terms of noticing and maybe naming the emotion or trying to recognize it. I've often looked at like long lists of emotions, thought, well, it could be, it seems it's not that easy necessarily for me. I mean, I'm like, well, God, that could be, but of course I'm thinking too much, I'm sure, but I didn't know if you had any, is that a common malady or,
Yes, it's a common malady because people want to think about it and they want to name what it is. And actually, Cynthia Bourgeault in her teaching does say, welcome anger, welcome whatever. We have talked about that a lot in the Welcoming Prayer team, and we decided not to encourage naming what you're feeling because that sends us back into thinking about it, but rather to feel what you're feeling in the body. That's what I mean about shifting from objective to subjective. You're noticing with your mind, and then you can stay thinking about that feeling. You know, why do I have that feeling? What exactly is it? You know, where did it come from? I mean, and we can tell, oh, that's that feeling that happened when my father did such as, I mean, you know, you can go into some long, elaborate story about it, and then you don't get to the depth of the welcoming prayer. So I don't think it's important at all to name what it is. I think it's important to feel what it is.
Yeah.
That's a relief. Thank you.
Good. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Linda, you've got some wisdom on this.
I don't know. That's very helpful. That last distinction that you made. Yeah, thank you for that. What I picked up from you this time that seemed new to me was the idea of having compassion for yourself as you go through this. Because I tend to go into how well am I doing, judging, etc. So just remembering that will be worthwhile. Yeah, thanks.
Yes, I hope. I hope we can all do that because I really believe that when we bring compassion to those parts of ourselves that we would rather not feel, that we would rather cut off, that we would rather escape, that bringing that compassion is what does the healing. That's the Spirit working through us to heal. And I think it's a little moment of crucifixion and resurrection, you know, that when we enter into the pain of our lives, our own suffering with compassion, then something changes. There's something of the Paschal mystery in that, where something dies in us and then something comes to new life. So you can play with it. How's that for a thought? That may not be worth thinking at all. But the most important thing is to feel what you're feeling and bring compassion to it, just like you would bring compassion to your little child who just stumped her toe and is crying, you know, bring compassion. Anything else? Fran Dirks.
I can never find the unmute button. This is if you have, chronic pain that you have all the time, if I lay down and my mind, I can feel that right away. So I'm a yoga teacher. I do yoga and, this is an embodiment practice as well. But I realized today that, what I do a lot of it to make the pain go away. Right away I have movements I want to do to make the pain, to relieve the pain, right, in those areas. So I'm wondering if, it's best to just sit with it first before you do anything, right? I mean, that's really what we're talking about here, right? Really feeling it, as opposed to trying to push it away right away with movement or action of some kind. Is that going with that?
Completely. That's what I think. It's important to sit with it first. Yes.
Because I'm thinking,
welcome it, do them.
Yeah, I'm just thinking it was with my students, I could even just have them, the first 5 minutes of class, just have them lay there and do nothing, just to notice what's happening like that, as opposed to moving things right away to make something change.
Yes, I think that's wonderful. And I think too, that if you take that approach, then it changes the relationship. Well, that's part of what the welcoming prayer does. It changes the relationship to the pain. It doesn't necessarily change the pain, but our attitude toward it changes. And that in itself can ameliorate the pain a bit. And then also it brings, if you bring compassion to yourself and the welcoming and the noticing and welcoming, then it changes that desire to get rid of it. I've got to do these things to get rid of the pain. Then you can do that much more gently and compassionately, so that it's not fighting it, not saying, I don't want you, get out of here, but
Right.
welcoming it and going with that and treating it with gentle, loving kindness.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fran. Doreen?
Yeah, I was just going to express that same thing that you just expressed, Fran, that I have this sciatic pain that screams so loudly I can't hear any parts of my rest of my body. And this time, out of compassion, I attended to that. And it was kind of like that pain was like, finally, you're paying attention. Like, okay, if you listen to me first, then um, uh, that then as you guided us, Cherry, to follow the thread, it was other sensations in my body could be noticed and heard because I had attended to what was screaming the loudest. So thank you for that. And I wanted to just, I don't want to get away without commending you for your protege, Fran Perry, and how she has guided us and taught us. So thank you to Fran Perry, and thank you to you, Cherry, for.
I'm going to second that.
Yes, what a blessing Fran is. And thank you, Doreen, for mentioning that about your sciatic pain. And I know how that screams. And yes, finally, you're paying attention to me, bringing that attention. It's just, I often think about it this way, that it's like a little child. Our pains and sensations in our bodies are like a little child that wants attention. And we keep brushing them off because we're busy. You know, I can't do that now. I'm doing whatever that's so important. And when we stop and actually, you know, take them into our laps, everything changes. Everything changes. So even if you still have a chronic pain, your relationship to that pain is going to change a little bit when you bring that compassion to it. Anything else?